and welcome to yet another interesting conversation with people from software development. Today my guest is somebody who is combining Scrum, Kanban, management, software craft into a good development culture. I always enjoy his talks, I always enjoy his slides in particular. He is a co-founder, Agile Software Craftsman of Craftbase, a company that builds products, from what I've seen, mostly around payments, which is another domain that's quite interesting nowadays. So I'd like to welcome Lemi Orhan Ergin.
Thank you very much, Alex. It's great to see you again.
So I think, I don't remember exactly when we met the first time.
I remember 2012 at the first Software Craftsmanship Conference of Istanbul or in Turkey. 2015, sorry, and you were one of the guest speakers.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, I remember. I think that was the first time, and then we kind of went back and forth. So you came to ITCAM conference. I think you invited me as a keynote to a
Java, I get yes, or PHP-Conf or Java-Conf, yes.
A Java conference,
yes.
Which was huge because compared to one thing you have to understand if you've never been to Istanbul. Now I'm talking to the audience. Is that Istanbul is a huge city, so the scale is completely different there, and you have. One thing that I remember about that conference is that the night before, in the same venue, they had a wedding, and then the whole day we had a conference with like 700 participants, and then at the end of the day there was another wedding in the same venue. So it was
like crazy.
Everything moves very fast, and it's quite. So I'm very interested to talk to you about the impact of scale and all these things. But first, I like to start by asking people and my guests, what drove you to programming? How did you come to start writing code and teaching other people and so on?
Yeah. So I've been developing software since 2001. At the end of my university career, I mean, I started software development, and I really liked it. The roots just goes to the Commodore 64 while I was on a primary school, and I really played with it, and I really cannot play video games very well, but the main interest for me was hacking them or writing code that moves on the screen. Therefore, instead of playing games on Commodore 64, I tried to write games, copy and paste, or look, read and write type of programs. And since then, since 2001, I worked on several different companies as a software developer in many different roles, as a consultant, as a coach, as a developer, architect, and solution architect, and such. And now I'm a co-founder of Craftbase. We are building CraftGate. It's a cloud-based payment gateway as a service. And we are providing a gateway hub for now in Turkey. Now we are connecting companies to banks. Just we are staying on the middle, and we are connecting them together.
All right. And I think part of your development as a professional has also been the exposure to XP practices and to the idea of software craft and also agile software development. What was your first touch with extreme programming practices like pair programming or test-driven development?
Yeah. On my, I guess, fourth year in my professional career, I was working at Sony Europe's development team. So Sony at that time had a huge development center in Istanbul, and I joined there at 2004. And in 2007, I joined a backend team, having 7 developers. There, I found my master as an apprentice, Thibaut Bodart. Thibaut Bodart was the team leader of that team, and that team was building backend services of all European websites of Sony. And at that time, I joined to the team, and he is a really visionary technical guy, and so he has so powerful communication skills, and he taught us how to build better software, how to work together, pair together, even mob together to build software. And also we were always discussing architecture, design problems, and how we can improve design issues and the total overall design of software. And during that period, I guess from 2007 to 2012, I learned a lot. I mean, and I started to spread my knowledge with the others via company meetings, via pairing, or via community meetings.
And this is an interesting part of every developer's life, because often I see this as a pattern. Many people I talk to, they get to these practices somehow, but then they go to the outside world of developers from their own bubble, and they start noticing that things aren't quite the same as in their bubble. So what was your first impression when you were talking to other developers about these practices? What feedback did you get?
First, it is not really easy to adapt at the beginning, because you are not really used to it. So you have to change your mindset, to change the way you work. Even you have to change your communication style with other people. So therefore, a guidance really helped during those transition, the mindset transition. At the beginning, what I really loved is building software as a community. So it's not a one man show; it's a teamwork. It's a teams can really build a successful software. So therefore, the principles of teamwork and effective team communication skills really work there. From that perspective, I always try to explain why they are good and why these practices and principles are good, but people really cannot adapt by just hearing them. So I changed my mind. I changed the way that I explain, and I start to be. I really wanted to be a model. I wanted to show the good practices, the principles behind them by using them, not just by explaining them. Therefore, first I need to really understand the reasons behind, and I really understand the topic, the practices from these different perspectives, because I don't want to be a fanatic. So TDD fanatic or pair programming fanatic, I don't want to be one of them. So everything in software development, the answer of every question is it depends. Therefore, if a practice or principle really works in one team, it doesn't mean it will work for others. Therefore, I really try to understand why it works and why it won't work. Therefore, on the second part, I try to learn, and I try to see in practice from others. Then I try to practice them a lot. So, for example, everyone is talking about 100% code coverage is a nonsense, or some people says that 100% code coverage is a goal, so asymptotic goal, as Robert Martin says. Then I decided to achieve that. Instead of talking about it without experiencing it, I dedicated myself for 3 months to fully 100% power a project while I was in eBay Turkey gidiyor. So after achieving that, now I can say that in these conditions it is nonsense, and in these conditions it is really sensible. It is perfectly at a goal. So I try to always be a model for convincing people.
Yeah, so that's a really good idea. I mean, but when do you have time for all of this? Because you are involved in companies, you do a lot of community work, you do talks, you do. It sounds like a lot of work to do everything well. So no.
I guess I was lucky because I worked at product companies. So companies building products and companies building projects and companies giving services, they have different dynamics. So if you are giving a service to other companies, like I worked as a consultant an agile coach for 2 years, and I had almost no time for sleeping for some time. And for a short period of time, I worked in a company who builds projects with short deadlines, and so it is impossible to really focus on quality, because deadlines, you have to catch the deadline instead of focusing on the to make the product successful. Your first and the only focus is catching the deadlines in these companies. But I was lucky, really, at eBay Turkey, at Sony, and at EasyCo, in the companies that I worked, they always had products, and therefore making the product in such a way that customers really, they're really satisfied is the most important aim for the whole company. Therefore, everything that I did is for improving the quality. Therefore, if I asked for time for improving the quality, the company gave me. I was really lucky.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. I started my career in outsourcing, and I noticed quite early that, so in outsourcing, one of the most important indicators is non-billable time, which has to be as close to minimum, as close to zero as possible. So whenever you are doing stuff that is outside a specific project, a specific task, that's non-billable time. You cannot bill for that, and somebody will be on your back telling you, non-billable time. Yes. So, and that is not a good incentive. So I guess, yeah, product companies are very different in this regard, because the most important focus, as you say, is, well, let's build something that customers want, they are happy with, and so on. And then it is a business objective to don't have bugs, to avoid having, all kind of technical issues, to have a fast development speed, and all these things where these practices help. So you've led and you've helped, and I think you are passionate about development culture in companies, right?
Yes.
What can you tell us about this? What would be a successful development culture from your point of view?
Yeah, culture is a really interesting topic. From time to time, I tell myself culture cultivator. So a catalyst between people and the company and the teams, between the teams. Culture is an interesting topic because you cannot shape it. You cannot I mean, you cannot give direction. You cannot convince. It is not shaped by convincing people. You have to lead them. You have to show them the path. I mean, so um, so culture. There are lots of subcultures in the company also. So the engineering culture, marketing culture, they are different between each other. And I especially I am really focusing on engineering culture. So so everyone is valuable in the team, but not only you have to hire, you have to work with the ones who can fit your culture. It doesn't mean that you always search for similar people from similar backgrounds, from similar ideas or let's say thoughts on ideologies. Not I really say um, you have to define first the boundaries of your culture. So uh, by what I mean is boundaries of culture. It means you have to define what does not the things that does not fit to your culture. So it is really hard. It is too hard to identify what fits to your culture because culture is a huge concept. Therefore, you have to first identify what the things that not fit to your culture. Then you should have values for your teams and for your companies. And by looking at the values and the principles of your team, your predefined values and principles, which can be generated or extracted by your team, not by yourself, of course. Then you have to expand your team by looking at your values and principles, these predefined values and principles. For example, I've been doing tons of interviews in these days. We are trying to expand our team, and I always look first from the candidate. Um, how does it fit? How that candidate can fit to our team? Can I work together as a pair, even though we are remote? We are as a pair. Can we can we code or can we discuss the things for like 5 hours a day? So the whole day can we easily without any important conflict. Uh, how can we work together? Or without in case of conflicts, how does these people behave? So can we easily resolve the conflict without any problems, huge problem, communication problems? So um, so that is one aspect. So the first point is from culture perspective. First, you have to define what the things that does not fit to our culture. Then we have to define the values and principles, what we did so far. And then we hire people that can really fit that cultural domains, cultural aspects. And we build our team in that aspect, in that sense. Um, then everything evolves by itself. So I really believe in inspect and adopt a Kaizen approach. So uh, there shouldn't be any formulas or rules of the team. So there should be values and principles, however, not rules, not formulas. So it it is not uh, agile. I mean, if there exists a formula, it does not come together with the concept of agile. So therefore, um, in step by step, every day or every week, every month, uh, we re-evaluate the way we work, the things, the happenings in the past, and the conflicts we had, problems on the production line, and everything. we reevaluate and we try new things. Then we adapt to it. Therefore, culture evolves by inspecting, adapting, and reevaluating, redoing, retrying again and again.
Yeah, so I like this because, as you said, the formula for culture doesn't work. If you try to apply a formula, like I go to many companies and I see big displays of these are our values and so on, and then I talk to developers and they are like, yeah, we laugh our asses loud when we see that. It's not. So it's always this disconnect between what is presented and what actually is there. And I keep telling people, culture is what people do when nobody looks at them, when you don't see what they are doing. That is what defines your culture. And trying to put this into a formula completely ignores the complexity of psychology and of social psychology of groups, which are come together and they evolve together. They come, different things emerge, different principles, and so on. But I'm curious about one thing, since you mentioned inspect and adapt. You probably have experienced this when I go to companies and they want to adopt some kind of agile process. And let's say we do Scrum, doesn't matter really. I think one of the most hated meetings is the daily meeting, but the second most hated meeting is the retrospective. So, people don't quite like, and I'm not sure why, because for me retrospective is a good time to get better. But have you noticed that, and how do you deal with it?
Yes, definitely, 100% I agree. So people really, in many companies, people really hate daily scrums and retrospectives, but I think I have some clues about it. So first, let me touch the daily meetings. So in the daily meetings, they really give utilization report of yesterday. So it's I really hate that type of the daily meeting. So I always say to my team that we need to plan our day in a daily basis. So it's a planning meeting, and we have to talk based on tasks, not based on people. If you have nothing to say about the task, then you should not talk. You should not say anything. So it is not about how long you worked or how far you went yesterday about a task. So I really don't care if you work or if you didn't work, if you worked at night or not. I really don't care. I really care is this current status of tasks, and if there exists a problem that we can handle today. So therefore, I look daily meetings as not status meetings, but daily planning meetings. Therefore, for example, in a daily routine, almost more than 15 people joined our daily Scrum. 15 people, sometimes 20, and normally it is not preferred. It exists half an hour or more. However, in our case, it just it does not exceed 10 minutes or 15 minutes because we have tasks on the display. We talk about it, ask for help, or give immediate feedback for other people that have impact, additional impact on them. So, and it is closed. So then we start our after daily hours or area. So we have a daily Scrum or daily meeting. It's 10 minutes. Then we have with a short, small team, a sub team. We come together and discuss production issues of yesterday, technical issues of yesterday. Someone shows a code snippet that can help us during our development that they invented. And that really splitting the daily meeting into two, and one is the planning, the second one is the technical discussion and daily alignment. So that really helped us during those pandemic days. And the second problem on the meetings is the retrospectives. So retrospectives could be the most important meeting of among all rituals, because it is one of the key points where you discuss how to improve ourselves or the procedures or the everything. However, they hate it because they try something. I mean, they decide action points. They want to try. They want to experiment. People try to do something that can. They think that this can improve them. However, they are not empowered, or they have no rights to do that action. So they ask for someone. We are really in trouble in these points and we want to do that. Are we allowed to do these? And they say, let us check. So if people really cannot see any valuable action happened after the retrospective, they really don't care about the meeting at all. So that meeting is important for deciding the action plans and doing the action plans. If you don't do anything, you cannot do anything. It's not important at all.
Yeah, and to return to the daily, I like your approach. I have also an alternative approach that I discuss with people, and I tell them, so it's just the daily meeting. Don't think about it as a meeting. It's just the morning coffee with colleagues. You go, you take a coffee, and you talk about, so what happened yesterday? Yeah, I struck a dead end there, and I don't know how I will finish the task, and so on. It can be a very informal conversation. It doesn't have to be like heavy process-based anything. And after all, it's something that you naturally do with people from your team if you get along with them, right? If you like them. If you don't like them, then you have a completely different problem, which is, why are you in that team? Perhaps you need to be in a team where you fit better with the culture. So it's and I like that. So let's go back a bit to when you first tried to test-driven development, because I think this is one of the points where many people realize that there are other ways of thinking about software. How was it for you? Do you remember when you first tried test-driven development? Did it make sense to you, or was it something completely
Yeah, I remember with people we were pairs, and he said that first let's try to identify how we can test it before writing anything. Then we try to draw diagrams on the whiteboard. Then we try to understand how we can test it first. Then he wrote the test first. Then he tried to write the production code. Then he said it is not enough because it's just one step. Now we should do that again and again till the production code really fits the design principles that we have. So at that point, I tried to realize that test-driven development is more about the design than testing. That is interesting because at the beginning, when I first learned or saw how it's how we can do test-driven development from my master, I really try to write test a lot. I mean, for example, instead of writing tests first, I first try to write tests for everything. First, a huge bunch of tests without any implementation, without any production code. Then I try to write production code. However, it was really exhausting to write production code for a huge set of test suite. Then I changed my mind. Then I tried to use mocking a lot. First, I tried to write create lots of mocks, and by using those mocks, I try to identify how I can implement that flow. Then they are too flaky. They were, and I really could not really feel comfortable because all the codes, all the tests I wrote, they became waste after few minutes or few hours, because during development I changed my mind, and during refactoring even the tests changed their mind. Therefore, I really could not get used to it. I mean, then I realized that it is much about design, not about testing. Therefore, I started to learn the real reasons of design principles. So for Four Rules of Simple Design, the Corey Haynes had a book about it. I wrote it. I read it. And about solid principles, I had a talk about it. Everyone is talking about solid principles are good, but however, only, I mean, when I ask people how you use those principles in your code base, and they say, I know that they are good, however, I don't use them a lot, or they cannot realize how they are applied to the software in reality. Therefore, I try to understand the real reasons, real roots of solid principles, design principles, and refactoring techniques. I try to learn refactoring techniques. Then I try to identify how pairs can write or do test-driven development, because when you're alone, it's really easy to skip some steps. It's really easy to say that let's skip that test, let's skip that refactoring because it is not required. Or you jump into an over-engineering black hole, and for hours you over-engineer without even touching anything on the test side or the design side. Therefore, when you have two brains working together, you really stop each other, or really guide each other. Therefore, test-driven development really fits when you're not alone. So there's an evolution journey in my test-driven development experience.
And that is very interesting. So you combine test-driven development and pair programming, and you managed to also, I imagine, to also experience this in communities and help people from communities experience this. I know you are very involved in communities there in Istanbul. Can you say a bit about how the community started and what has been going on there?
Sure. So when I was at university at the very beginning of 2000s, there were no communities in software development sector in Istanbul, or if there exist a few, I didn't know that. Then when it comes to 2010s, we start to hear a few communities, PHP communities, .NET communities, C communities, and Agile communities start to evolve. Then there's an explosion. So in 2015, like Google GDGs, and many different, more than one Agile communities, more than one PHP communities and such. So I really love giving back to the community, the idea of giving back to the community, because I didn't get everything that I know from reading books or during practicing. So I hear from my friends, I learn from gatherings, from meetings, meetups, while watching their videos. Therefore, I really love to give back voluntarily. Therefore, uh, from since 2008, I'm talking at events. At the beginning, I push I submit call for papers. I want to talk at your community event at that time, but now it is more professional. There are lots of call for papers everywhere, so this we can submit, or they come to you and ask. Um, uh, so I really give very important. I feel that those meetings are very important. Therefore, for every single talk in the community, I spent hours. What I mean is like minimum 40 hours of preparing slides and writing down the transcript, the things that I need to adapt. Because, for example, my latest talk about solid principles, um, like for 5 months, I almost spent um, 2 or 3 evenings, the nights of my nights every week, just for reading books about solids, reading books about design principles, and trying to give some prepare some original ideas from them, and for and about uh, preparing the slides. Every single slide on a deck, I spent hours. Just they should be perfect, pixel perfect. They should be audience oriented, and so it's like a movie transcript. So there should be a starting point and the end point. From the start to the beginning, from the beginning to the end, there should be a story with breaks, with different aspects, with different chapters, like different chapters of the book, and all the visuals should reflect those ideas. Therefore, I really spent my private private time to those events. Definitely.
Yeah, and you can see that. So as I said in the beginning, check Lemi's talks and slides because they are really well crafted. Um, so okay, some of the presentations that you did in the past were about Git, and this is something that is interesting to me because I've noticed many people have troubles with Git, and many people are like, yeah, we don't like that. We need to merge a lot. We need to do a lot of things, and I'm always like, why? Because it's so easy. Uh, you've never worked with Subversion. You've never worked with CBS. You've never worked with Visual Source Safe, which, by the way, Visual Source Safe used to lose the whole change database about every 6 months or so, and you would have a lot of problems with it. This is the simplest system that we have, but I don't see anything getting simpler than Git because the problem of change sets in software development code is very complex. So that's about as good as it can get. So I think it's more about the usage of Git rather than the tool itself. And I'm curious what you found and what prompted you to create talks about Git.
Yeah. First, Git. I totally agree with you. Git is very simple and flexible and powerful. However, the, it is a little bit dangerous because of its flexibility. Why I see it is a little bit dangerous because it fits in the middle of your development pipeline. So everything starts from the visual control system. Therefore, a branching model should really fit your development culture. Uh, so the way you can get the most benefit from Git is using a most appropriate branching flow, branching mechanism. So there are a lot of them in the literature. So for example, Git flow, everyone almost in the sector, the majority of developers use Git flow. So there's a Git develop branch, master branch that reflects the production line, and develop branch you create a branch from master. It is a next release branch. Then you merge to master when you want to deploy to production. However, it changes the way you work, because when you use Git flow, you start to use branches a lot, feature branches a lot, and when you start using feature branches, you start using pull requests. Then you stop regularly. You stop the production line for the sake of code review, for the sake of merging. However, it pushes the team, the people, to work individually, and the deployment frequency decreases a lot, because when it is Git flow, so it is not, you're not pushing the master anymore. So therefore, when you use you use branching mechanisms, it means you will slow down the production line a lot. And many anti-patterns arise along this journey. So when people start to deploy, commit everything that they changed. They commit the things that they changed. However, it should fit to context. So commits mean context. So what I start to think about, why we are committing. Are we committing for the sake of following what we did so far, or rolling back to a commit from the past? Is it something that we really need? Then I heard the principle: commit early, commit often, perfect later, publish once. That explodes my mind, because that principle is really that guides us to trunk-based development, because it says during development what you really need is having checkpoints. Those are commits. Commit early and commit often. You don't need to look for passing, or even the code can. I mean, you might have compilation errors. It doesn't matter. But if you think that it is time to commit, you should commit, and commit early and commit often, especially during test-driven development. In each cycle, it is really good to commit. After that one, commit messages should be logical. However, it is really not possible to give logical commit messages on every commit, because not every commit can fit in a context. Therefore, commit early, commit often, and you should not publish every time, because it is not all about. It's a usage of SVN, or it's not a usage of distributed version control system. So if you are using a version control system, you should use the power of commits, not the push. So you have to perfect later. You have to perfect your commit. Then you should publish. When you publish, everyone else will see them and learn from the messages and learn from your commits. Therefore, I start to talk on conferences about Git anti-patterns, because I see lots of problems, and people really cannot build a culture on top of Git. They sometimes commit and push. They sometimes commit. They sometimes change the history and force push. However, there are some best practices and the worst practices about them. Therefore, I try to explain. There is no formula. However, if your aim is to deploy to increase your deploy frequency, first Git flow is not the best. Best Git branching mechanism. You should go to trunk-based development. And the second one, if you would like to go to trunk-based development, then your philosophy, your commit, your philosophy on using commit should change. So it's a journey. I try to explain in my talks.
Yeah, so I've had these conversations also with Thierry Depot, who is a big proponent of trunk-based development, and I've had a few arguments against this, which is I've been using branches for a long time in Git, and they work for me perfectly fine. I don't have absolutely no problem with them, and the big reason is I never use long-lived branches. I only use short-lived branches. And I was pointing out to Thierry, so when you are using Git, actually what you have locally is a branch, is your local branch. And if you don't push anything to trunk for a week, is again a long-lived branch. Is exactly the same as having, any other kind of branching mechanism and so on. It doesn't actually solve your problem. I would say that it makes it worse, because at least before you had your code integrated on some branch with other people, but now you have your code on your own computer, not integrated with anybody. So that's why my general rules for using Git are just use the simple commands: add, commit, push, merge. That's all. And branch. These are all the commands you're allowed to use. Stash sometimes. And you can do bisect if you have a very weird, those are the commands you should be using. No force pushes, no weird stuff
but
like
rebase? Rebase? Don't you use rebase?
I don't. Well, I understand rebase. The messages are a bit nicer. I don't care. It's good enough for me to have merge push. That's fine. And then the next big thing, commit and push as often as possible. I don't want you to push every 2 days. I don't want you to push every 3 days. Push every 5 minutes. Push every 15 minutes. It has to be at least once a day, probably at least once an hour. That's where we are. And when we are done with the feature branch, remove it. Merge it, goes to production, remove it. And these are the rules that for me have been working very, very good. And that's why, I don't understand this whole thing, because it's mostly about, we have this tool that is so complex, let's use everything from it.
But one drawback about merge is they make the commit history not readable. So commit history is a documentation of developers. So I always look at the commit history and try to identify what is going on the commits to software. However, merge, when there's a merge, so merge commit, then you have 2 branches. When you have multiple merge commits, then you have lots of different branches, and it's like a letter, it's like a highway pattern, and you cannot understand this commit. Is it on the production? Should I send it to staging? Is it tested? Where is it now? Is it merged to master or not? Therefore, I really like the use of rebase to keep the history linear and make the commit one after another, coming one after another, and readable.
Yeah, I can understand that. So that's one thing that I can understand. To be honest, it's an element of style, because I rarely need to figure out whether this is in production or not. I know it's in production. I know it's in staging, because there are the branches specific for that, and then the whole thing actually leads to reducing the work in progress, because that's where most teams, I think, are failing. If you have 200 features open at one time, of course you'll have problems with merges, commits, whatever. No matter, you can do trunk-based development, you can do whatever you want. Okay. But with 200 features open, it gets unmanageable. So yeah, reduce the work in progress, work on 2 features, and then you'll have no problems with that.
In one team, I had an interesting story about it. In one team, I was going to a company at that time as a consultant, and that team, the business asked the team to make a feature live from now on. That's all they say. They said, and the code, the feature code is on a branch, was on a branch, and for 2 years, no one touched that branch. For 2 years, it was there, and for 2 years, it had been there. So one developer just worked for a week, for a whole week, just trying to identify how he could merge that branch to the master. And we had lots of troubles about while testing, because it is now on, it's impossible to merge without having troubles about testing.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've also seen this. I've seen a team that had, so they had an older version and they kept developing it for a while on a branch, and then they developed a new version on another branch, and the 2 branches diverged, and it was like 1.5 years later, and the 2 branches had diverged a lot, and they were thinking, should we merge those? I was like, you have no chance. Forget about it. There's no way you can do that. It's impossible. So yeah, short-lived branches. If you have a branch longer than a week, other than your main and staging and so on, then even your own branch on your computer should be no longer integrated. Should not take longer than a week.
But sometimes we need long branches. Sometimes, for example, last month we had a branch. I started to work on a branch, and after 4 weeks, I'm still in that branch, because that's a really big refactoring stuff. So we had 2 options. The first one is adapting the existing code base slowly, step by step. It takes longer. However, you don't need long living branches at all. And the second option, work on a long living branch, do a big bang change. From time to time, I had to select the second one, the big bang, due to the design of the system and due to business needs. Then what I did is merging from master to long living branch regularly, like once in few days. Then at the end of the development, we squash everything on the long living branch, then commit to master as one single commit. Therefore, all the merges from master to long living branch disappears. So it is just for the sake of making them consistent.
Yeah, and this is actually a very good practice. So, by the way, again, to the audience, if you are curious about this, search James Shore continuous integration talk. He has a really good talk on continuous integration, where he explains that continuous integration is not Jenkins. It's not anything. It's not a tool. Continuous integration is the practice of having everything integrated as early and as much as possible at all times. And so one of the techniques for that is, even if you're working as you are saying on a separate branch, just integrate from the master into your branch again and again and again. And so you always have an integrated branch. And that's actually the really good idea behind it. And this doesn't care about, Jenkins. Jenkins is a tool. We care about the practice. But yeah, what I notice often is that people, yeah, I usually find smaller ways to slice this into smaller steps. And I think this is a continuous challenge. If you are not used to it, it's already a big challenge. But even if you are used to it, sometimes you find these intractable problems that probably after some experiences, you'll figure out how to split them into smaller pieces.
Yes.
That's usually what happens. All right, so I cannot go forward without saying that you were featured once in Wired magazine and in many, many news sites around the world because you found a security issue in macOS High Sierra, right? Can you tell a bit about this story, because that's so, I mean,
yeah,
to me it's funny, but it was a complete happenstance, right?
Yeah, the Apple root bug, right? So that's an interesting, really interesting story, because when I after the happening, when I see my name on Time magazine and the daily news magazine, it's I will talk to my grandchildren after years, I hope. Interestingly, I didn't find the bug on High Sierra. In reality, I was only the one who sent the tweet. So in during a normal, usual, ordinary day or work day, after the work day, while I was closing my laptop and putting to my bag, and an infrastructure guy, my friend, just came to me and said they should assign a password for root user in my machine, and they said they already did it for everyone in the company, and I was the only one missing. So I opened my laptop again, and it started to add a root password to my laptop. And I asked why he was doing that one. And he said they in my machine, in one machine, one colleague's laptop, they lost control of their user, and they couldn't recover their files. Therefore, they searched internet and found a way of recovering their user on an Apple forum 2 weeks before the happening that day. A guy wrote that just unclick the lock button on the user's screen and write root on the user and empty password and click several times. Interesting, they did it and they recovered the user. And I said, and they had a very long conversation with Apple Turkey staff in Turkish. However, they couldn't really understand what's going on, and it's really interesting that the infrastructure guy, my friend, wrote this sentence. He wrote that you couldn't understand the importance of this bug, and if something happens to other people, you are the responsible. And he wrote that one. Later on, he said to me, and I said, just send it to send a tweet to Apple support people, because we know that if you have a trouble, sometimes it is really not possible to access companies. Just social media might be the only way to just get attraction from companies, especially in Turkey. This is maybe this is the only way. Therefore, I advised him, and he said he didn't have any Twitter account, and he said just send for myself. I mean, just you send it. And at night during while I'm trying to make my baby sleep, I wrote with my one hand I wrote a tweet to and mentioned Apple. I I thought that this is an important bug, but I didn't realize that this is such an important bug. So via root account with no password, you can access to any Apple computer via even via remote procedural call. So um, and it exploded. The attraction exploded. It went viral. Then the atmosphere changed after some time. People start to say, if I were Apple, I would sue you. And they said, you are so irresponsible. And I got a message via Twitter. I'm keeping it. A guy wrote, you are a narcissist moron. And for the first time, I got such a message. And I tried to I mean think, did I did I do the right thing or wrong? Because irresponsible disclosure is a thing, So you have to be responsible to the people. However, after some time, after one day, I got a message from the manager of the data center, Apple data center of California. He sent LinkedIn profile also about for the validation at that time, and the guy wrote that thank you for informing us, because he says, you informed everyone about the bug, and we fixed in minutes. We fixed 1,000 machines in minutes. And since it is already exposed to public few weeks ago from a forum, it means it's already on deep web or dark web. So it means some people hack Mac computers without any knowledge. I mean, we don't get notified about. Therefore, the whole world fixed the problem in one day, it seems. And I was really upset at that time, because going viral is not a good thing for human psychology. Because I really didn't want to talk even with people, because in my Twitter account, BBC, CNN correspondents wrote me messages. I answered some of them, and my company says, stop answering them because you're in danger, so stop. And those are different dates, interesting dates for my life.
Yeah, I imagine that's why I wanted to hear your side of the story, because I imagine the psychological aspect of this suddenly being put under the light for reporting something that you assumed was well known. I mean, you didn't thought that you were the one reporting it. It was more like something well known. But indeed, there are procedures for responsible disclosure and so on. So just as for the audience, if you find any such bugs, it's best to check the disclosure procedures. Although in this case, it went really well because they fixed it immediately, and I'm not sure through the procedure if they would have done the same thing. So it's anyway, really not interesting event. So I'd like to. We're getting close to the end, and I'd like to end with a few questions for you, for our guests. started this last week, and actually for these seasons of chats. And I like these questions because they will tell us more about more useful advice for the audience and more about you. So that's quite interesting. First question is, what book did you like and would recommend?
Okay. From from um, from technical perspective, um, um, I'm I'm reading uh, lots of books. Okay, one book that changed the way I work. I can recommend is the Software Craftsman book from Sandro Mancuso, especially the Sandro's story about how uh, how he managed to be a developer from Brazil, from moving to London, and the mindset, the software craftsmanship mindset, it really have impact on my whole career and journey and mindset. I could recommend it if you are not for the audience, if you haven't read it yet, I really advise. I took lots of notes on it. Um, that I mean that's a really good book for reading. Understand?
Yeah, and that story, I know Sandro's story. It's a very inspiring story. So yeah, definitely. Now, is there a book that you did not like and would not recommend?
Yeah, I try to read and understand the domain design driven book. Really, I love to understand it by reading the most advised book ever about BDD. However, it is really hard for me to identify. It's a strong book and hard to. I had to spend lots of time on it, so I couldn't really finish it. Therefore, um, it's a little bit advanced book, I guess. What how can I say? Therefore, I would recommend, but I really love a simplified version of it, more simplified explanation of it. Um, yeah, I can say that.
Yeah, and I think it's well known that the domain-driven design book is quite difficult, and you have to read. I think there are about 3 books on domain-driven design that you need to read before you understand domain-driven design. This would be the first, uh, and I think the second is something like applying domain-driven design or something like that. I don't remember the third, but it's kind of a knowledge in the community that you need to read 3 books, not only that one. Um, what topic do you think it's not discussed enough in the industry or in your communities where you go?
Yeah, my I think definitely software design, coupling and cohesion. Everyone is talking about frameworks and languages. However, the fundamentals of software design, coupling and cohesion, and all the and from the beginning of coupling and cohesion, the modularity, solid principles, all the design principles, every aspect of software design comes. I feel that comes from coupling and cohesion, and we really do not talk about it if enough. And I couldn't see any talks or any videos about it. Yeah, there are a few of them, like the legendary video of coupling and cohesion. Ron Jeffries, Joe, um, sorry to forget it, Reisberger, and And net price, wonderful video, a 45 minutes talk discussion about coupling equation. So the sector really needs more about it, about software design and such. I guess that is the topic.
Yeah, I mean that sounds about right. Even if you look at solid principles, many of them are actually inspired from coupling and cohesion and can be derived from there, from low coupling, high cohesion. I would add naming, maybe.
Oh yeah, could be. Yeah,
I'm not sure. They are related, but it's not enough to have that. What topic do you think is discussed too much in the industries or community?
Too much. Um, so um, so so there's hypes from time to time. So during the hype circle or hype diagram, for example, for long years, people talk about microservices again and again and again. Hundreds of videos talked about microservices, and later on they said the monolith first principle, and and I mean my mind blown again. So instead of focusing on microservices, let's focus on modularity first. So that really changed the whole atmosphere in my mind. So I started to push myself to focus on modularity first. Therefore, for example, for 2 years or 3 years after we started CraftBase, we really built all our code base in hexagonal infrastructure architecture, hexagonal architecture. Alistair Cockburn um, created the name from ports and adapters. So also we started to give talks about ports and adapters and hexagonal architecture last year. I gave 3 talks about it. Modularity is important, is much important than microservices. Therefore, microservices, talking about microservices is enough, I guess.
Yeah, as we used to say, and we said this even from the beginning of the hype, that modularity is much more important, and microservices are just a detail on how you deploy your modules. Yeah. You can deploy your modules inside of a monolith, like in a namespace or something like this, as a library, as a DLL, as a service, whatever else you want. But you have to have modules, otherwise. Next question. What would be your ultimate career achievement? So something that if you do that, you could say, okay, so I can retire, not necessarily that I have the money to retire, but I can retire.
Okay. So I had dreams like as a kid, when people ask you what you really want to do and you say something, and I said being a scientist at that time, and I couldn't be a scientist, I couldn't be an academician. However, I mean, if I could achieve first writing a book, I really express myself and put on words, and have a name on the literature as like a scientist, like on a paper, like an article. Then I will feel that I achieved my lifetime goal. I hope that can happen one day.
Okay. So I have to encourage you on that because it's easier than it seems. And I think you have all the right background for it. Last question is from this series, and then I have a few more to close. What advice would you give to a younger version of yourself?
Yeah. For the younger version of myself, um, I would say, I could say, give more importance to your private life too. I mean, I really, I have a family. I have two kids, and I live in Istanbul. But when I look back, I spent my nights, evenings, days on what I am really passionate about about my profession. I wrote code. I read something about my profession. Uh, I, I I mean, please, please, you have your private life. You have beloved people. Just spend more time with them. Uh, uh, your profession is of course important. You may love it, of course. However, uh, if you sacrifice your family, this is not an achievement. For example, in some of my talks I say, if you sacrifice your beloved ones, your family, for for the sake of success, even you achieved something, it is not a success. It is something different. So, family, if you think that family first, it means it should be the family first. So, um, just I I really would give that thing to my younger one.
Excellent. Amy, this has been an absolute blast. So before we close, is there anything that you'd like to add that we haven't discussed that might be interesting for our audience?
Um, just for few years, I really think that we really lose our focus on the fundamentals. Even though we are experienced every year, we get experience every year. The fundamentals always they are the most important part of our profession, and we start to lose control on the knowledge of fundamentals. Therefore, uh, regularly we should check the fundamental topics, like an apprentice, like a newbie. We should go back those books or those topics and work on them, because every decision we have are built on those fundamentals. This is my I mean this is the idea that I extracted from on the last years. Just I would like to share with the audience.
All right. So where can people find you?
Uh, Via social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, I'm available. I love to contact with the audience if they want.
All right. Thank you, Lemi. This has been an absolute blast. It's time to close. I'd like to thank everybody for listening to this very interesting conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, we have to pay our dues to the YouTube algorithm, so please like, share, subscribe, comment, because in this way more people will see this, and perhaps some of these ideas will spread faster through the communities and our industry, which will make our job easier together as developers. Um, I was Alex Bolboaca, coming to you from Mosaic Work Studios, and with Lemi Orhan Ergin, my amazing guest today. And until next time, I'd like to remind you to think, design, and work smart.